and join and kind of see what these Monday calls are all about. A lot of familiar faces here as well. Today, we do not have a presentation. We're going to have instead a general discussion. So before I hand it over to Matt, first and foremost, if anyone has any announcements or any topics that they want to bring up in front of the group, now is a great time to do so. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about an opportunity that came our way with the Federation of American Scientists that Matt can go into more detail on in just a moment. So with that, Matt, I'll turn it over to you and we can get the conversation going.
Yeah, great. Thanks, David. And post the holiday yesterday, we're probably going to have a little light attendance, but that's okay. We keep rolling on and we have lots of good things to talk about. And for those of you that are new to this call, like David said, we have two flavors of calls. One, the presentation call, and others where we just have a round robin discussion, events, things that folks would like to share that would help other regions around the country strengthen their manufacturing ecosystem, or problems that they're confronting. That's some of the most interesting conversations about what are challenges, and that's what I hope to talk a little bit about, kind of the challenge and opportunity I put in the AMCC update. I'll come back to that in a little bit. For those of you that are on these calls regularly, that we send out the AMCC update. This is a weekly newsletter. If you're not on that feed, David can connect you and get you on that weekly item. And I like to highlight a couple of things on this call at the outset, just to remind people. This call is 30 minutes. It's very efficient. And we know you get a lot of stuff on your email too. So that's why I want to highlight these things. As you know, in the AMCC, thanks to a partnership with EDA, we are continuing and expanding our work, which includes doing some roadshows around the country. And our operations director, David Van Sicklen, has been a part of those roadshows and has written up reports on each of the 4 that we've done so far. So David, you could drop those in the chat. They're in the AMCC update, but it's good to have. So, for regions, around the country that would like to host a set of meetings that would help them advance their work. We were just talking to Brian, from Alabama about doing that just at the beginning of the call. If you heard that, lots of good opportunities to help regions bring their manufacturing ecosystem stakeholders together around these meetings. So you can check out those reports, and then we also did a recent cybersecurity briefing. So if you missed that, if you distribute that to your stakeholders, super important. We had an experience in Utah last week. UAMI, the folks leading the manufacturing community in Utah, got Zoom bombed. So they were hosting a webinar. They pivoted quickly. Casey Sanders there at UAMI apparently did a fabulous job to blunt that attack. I don't know if anybody's had that experience, but Casey said, if he's not on the call this morning, but feel free to reach out to him if you have kind of a similar issue or concern on how to prevent those from happening. Lots of other really cool things about federal opportunities that are, that from DoD has a infrastructure pilot program that's out there. We highlight that in there. And DOE's got a state manufacturing leadership program that's coming out. And also DOE's got the Industrial Assessment Center expansion. Jeremy's on here. One of the cool things that we have just developing is this partnership with with other communities of practice. So if you guys recall, through ARPA, EDA set up 8 different communities of practice, and they overlap. And some are dedicated to EDA-only programs, like Build Back Better Regional Challenge and the Economic Development Districts and the Good Jobs Challenge. And others are more general and ubiquitous, like ours, dedicated to strengthening American manufacturing writ large. We had a great call last week with the Community of Practice for the Good Jobs Challenge, and that's being led by Jobs for the Future. So we're super excited about, and thanks to Nancy Gilbert and Tori Brown for their facilitation on setting up a meeting between JFF and AMCC so that we can work together as overlapping communities of practice. As we know, the big 6 items for strengthening a manufacturing community ecosystem, the first one is workforce, right? So it makes perfect sense that we would be partnering with Jobs for the Future and the Good Jobs Challenge grantees, 32 of those around the country, to help strengthen the manufacturing ecosystem. So more to come on that partnership. Very excited. We also, have Dan Sweeney on this call, and we're developing a partnership with him and the American Renaissance work that's been done, and also the American Sustainable Business Network. We have a lot of businesses out there that are kind of modeling and performing on the triple bottom line. That is, making plenty of money and expanding their business, but doing it in a way that also strengthens their communities. So a lot of good stuff going on, a lot of things that are described in that AMCC update, including our partnership with the Industry Studies Association and Andrew Reamer, who does just an incredible, wide-ranging deep dive on research that we drop in a few tidbits. Thanks, David, for scouring that for the tidbits that we drop in there and other items so that you don't have to do that search. But there's nuggets in there that you can that can inform your work, that you dive into that. I mentioned Dan. Dan, you haven't been on these calls. You want to say hello and tell a little bit about your, where you're coming from?
Oh, sure. Well, thanks, Matt. Dan Sweeney. I'm background. I was, product of the '60s. Went into manufacturing to join the labor movement. I spent 13 years as a machinist, and my company closed with 3,000 other companies that closed in the Chicago area in the 1980s and 1990s. And I then founded what is now called Manufacturing Renaissance. As an organization, sort of answering the question, was manufacturing dead or not? And we were sort of the SWAT team on plant closings. And after working for like the city of Chicago, the state of New York, for unions, for community organizations, our focus in manufacturing has been always in deep appreciation of the private sector, but our attention has been on how do we involve the public sector in an effective way, and retaining our industrial base and expanding our industrial base and participating in it. We now are focused on manufacturing as a foundation for development. And we have our own particular programs in education and training and ownership succession, which is a huge, existential issue for small manufacturing companies, and in shaping, sort of an industrial policy. Our interest in industrial policy, and maybe Matt has offered, maybe there'll be another time I can talk about all of this in more depth, but we believe our industrial policy should be inclusion and industry 4.0. We totally embrace new technologies, but we have to invest heavily to include the communities many of us represent, in the process of owning companies, working for companies, shaping policy, and so on and so forth. And then finally, we're in the process of launching the Federation for Manufacturing Renaissance, which will be a sort of an organization that will hopefully complement and work closely with all of you in the various initiatives that you're working on, with a particular emphasis on making sure that communities of color are included in all aspects of manufacturing. So let me just stop there, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course, and welcome. Appreciate you being on and being a BFF, Dan. We explained to Dan what being a BFF is. Yeah,
and I'll put my contact information in the chat. So
great, awesome. We also have, we have a lot of great attendees from diverse fields here. As you guys know, I've reported out in the past about work going on in different states to get state governments to do some of the things that we've heard, some states are doing, like we reported out on our Connecticut visit about how there's a chief manufacturing officer and a specific state manufacturing plan. Jennifer Lovett is on from California Forward, who has been, and Jennifer, would you like to jump on real quick, introduce yourself, and talk about what some of the work that's happened over the last several years to get the Golden State to be more aggressive on strengthening the manufacturing ecosystem, and remind folks that California has more manufacturing employees than any other state. Jennifer, if you're on, you want to say hello?
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you so much, Matt. And I hope you'll jump in and add some more here as well. Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Lovett. I'm Associate Director of Public Policy for an organization in California called California Forward. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with a mission to advance sustainable and inclusive economic growth in California. And for the past few years, we've been working with Matt and some other partners in California on developing a set of recommendations to strengthen California's manufacturing ecosystem. And I'm happy to, just a moment, try and share that in the chat as well. And chief among those was really developing a statewide sustainable manufacturing council that could help knit together all of the different activities that are happening in California and be really strategic in terms of policy development and understanding what the needs of manufacturers in California are. And California Forward, actually, we have a network of regional partners throughout the state, which is what we call our California Stewardship Network. And these are organizations that are on the ground, often acting as intermediaries, helping to bring industry and education to the table. And many are involved in innovation-driven economic activity like manufacturing in their regions throughout the state. And so it really represents the kind of the breadth of what you see in California when it comes to manufacturing.
Thanks, Jen.
So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's great. I'm just saying thank you. I didn't want to put you on the spot. Please drop your too much. I mean, drop some information on the chat about what that work is. That would be awesome. And it's a perfect setup, Jennifer, for the transition to talking about tactics to bring our ecosystem together. That's what I put in the AMCC update as a discussion point. Ishan Sharma is on the call from the White House. We had a discussion with him not too long ago about what kind of tactics can help strengthen manufacturing ecosystems, what kind of tactics and federal interventions, I should say, can strengthen manufacturing ecosystems. So we have all of these federal interventions happening, and they all have their programmatic requirements. Well, one kind of interesting tactic that you all saw, those of you in regions around the country that participate in the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program. And we are excited about a partnership with the Federation for American Scientists on kind of calling this tactic out in some kind of a policy memo. We put this in the AMCC update, what we're talking about there. But you all are stakeholders on the ground, dealing with these kind of programmatic requirements. And this tactic is promising insofar as it's a forcing mechanism for stakeholders in a region to build relationships with other entities in their ecosystem that could be important to strengthening that ecosystem, for the long term. In the case of the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program, you've got a region applying for a DoD grant, but the application required them, or still requires them, to have a relationship with another federal investment, and that is on our Manufacturing USA Institutes. the idea being, is my take on that idea, is that by requiring there to be some kind of a relationship with that other federal investment, the technologies that are developed in those manufacturing USA institutes are more likely to be infused in those regional manufacturing community collaborations. And so I know folks out there have been dealing with that obligation and opportunity. And so I wanted to throw it out there to folks to see, if they think that's a promising tactic. I see Dion, I call that Dion from Southern California. It's a forcing mechanism that comes with challenges. But Dion, what do you think of that tactic? You've been involved in this regional economic development for a long time. Do you have a take on those kinds of requirements, the burden and potential benefits?
Yes, Matt. So on the potential benefit side, I think it, as you pointed out, it creates that linkage and increases the chances that the other investment will be magnified. I think it also gets people to consider how to leverage other assets and other investments by the federal government. And it strengthens the local ecosystem to have their own ecosystem and to learn about other best practices by having those relationships.
And Bernie Lynch, who's at a defense manufacturing community that crosses, what is it, Bernie, like 5 states? Which, yeah, you're relatively new into the program. How beneficial and burdensome is that tactic in your experience? Yeah.
Well, beneficial or burdensome, I haven't found it burdensome at all. I think, connecting communities and support structures, to me, there's still a lot of work that I'd like to see occur with points of connection. I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel. And, how do you just connect community structures connectedly instead of replication and repeat? And Matt, it's what I love about this group. It's really looking at some best practices around the country and then figuring out in what ways we can all connect. But the Defense Community Support Program is a great program. I know this is comprised of many groups from it, but I would still welcome the opportunity for how we can better connect and work together. And my hope is, you'll be able to help guide us in doing that as well. But thanks.
Yeah, of course. It's a work in progress, of course, but it's an exciting one. And getting partners like Accenture and others, private partners into the game, I think, is super important. I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, Kevin, but in your private sector, you have these innovation centers around the world, but across the United States. Are you guys tapped into this Manufacturing USA Institutes of Technology? It seems to me that is each one of those are public-private partnerships, but from my experience anyway, so far, not all of our private partners are aware of them.
Yeah, no, Matt, I would say that we're not as aware or connected. I think that's maybe one of the opportunities of this community is to bring companies like ours closer to what's going on, on the ground. I find that there's still a pretty big separation between what I see in private industry and what's going on at the federal level and state and regional levels, and just creating those connections, I think, are obviously valuable for everybody engaged. But I'm still learning and still surprised at how much there is to learn about these are, right? And then how do you actually bring the folks that we work together on a regular basis, our clients, to even take advantage of some of the incentives that are out there. So lots
Yeah.
to learn. I think we have lots to share in terms of information, points of view, industry wise and whatnot. I'm still figuring out how to bring it together in a way that kind of makes sense.
Matt, can you hear me? This is Phil Singerman.
Yeah. This is
So-
Phil Singerman. Yeah, go ahead.
So if finding out more about the institutes is of interest to the community, you might want to invite Mike Molnar and Frank Gale, his deputy from NIST, to give a briefing on the overall program. And then particularly with regard to the defense, the 8 manufacturing institutes that are funded by defense, you might want to have your DoD colleagues reach out to Tracy Frost, who runs those institutes, for a briefing too. At MEP, I was responsible for both programs at NIST, and there are some points of connection, but there are also there's a great diversity in terms of the business models and the areas of focus of the institutes, some of which are more amenable in both based on both criteria to working with organizations that we work with. There is potential there, and so it's worth doing some investigation.
So, hey, thanks, Phil. So, David, maybe you could work with Phil and capture some of those contacts, and then maybe in the next AMCC update, we could put that in there so that folks could do better to weave in their work with the institutes. That's one example of this larger, broader tactic that we're talking about on federal interventions. There are the MEPs, right? That's another federal investment in every state. I don't know. I think Nancy's on the call. I don't know. Are there EDA programs that force, there to be a relationship with MEPs as another example of federal investments?
Yeah, we don't have ones that require it in the same way that the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program does require that partnership with an institute. But what we do is emphasize coalition style. I mean, more and more those coalition applications, and we do ask all of EDA's applicants for its particular to demonstrate those partnerships where they are going to leverage the other federal and private resources around. So it usually behooves an applicant for competitive reasons to identify those kind of partnerships. And then the Build to Scale program is really based also on that kind of coalition for commercialization type activities and that kind of thing for entrepreneurship and business development support. So I would say it's built into our competitive criteria, but it's not the same kind of you must, more you really should. So.
Yeah, is there a reason why you guys have not done the you must? Just it seems to. Well, anyway, I don't know.
We like to have some flexibility because the EAA program is so it runs the gamut from a lot of very smaller projects where it doesn't make as much sense, and we might discount some worthwhile projects from that. But certainly for our bigger initiatives, I think even though it may not be an absolute requirement, if you had for example, one of the Build Back Better Regional Challenge or Good Jobs Challenge applications that did not include good partnerships, they weren't all that competitive. So and the same may be true looking ahead to tech hubs, for example.
Right. Ishan, I know you are interested in this tactic. Is this any questions or comments on this topic occur to you?
None at this time. I mean, I'm mostly in listening mode here, but I think more broadly, I know that Tech Hubs, for example, is on a quite accelerated timeline. And so implementing this is in a way that is digestible in the near term would be perhaps most helpful. I understand that some of the hang up is, the NOFOs with OMB currently. And so apologies. I think we are working on that, but would love to, I think, brainstorm and hear and read anything if folks are interested in this sort of broader interagency partnership for regional innovation. I think to your point, Matt, earlier, workforce is sort of the key component to unlocking the rest of the success. But I'll pause there.
Oh, no, appreciate it, Ishan, and appreciate you listening in. We're excited about this Federation of American Scientists partnership to kind of flesh out that issue a little bit. So it adds value. The door is always open, to communicating with us, to anyone here on this call and in our manufacturing ecosystems around the country to inform us on this issue. We have lots of anecdotal evidence about the importance of a manufacturing ecosystem, for example, and we're trying to, as we know from our evolving metrics project around manufacturing community ecosystem metrics, that there's a strong demand for tools and tactics that can help folks identify who the key stakeholders are, the interventions that are already happening, and how they can, put together more strategic interventions with the help of federal government, but with the help of state government. We talked with Jennifer about there in California, and we saw with Carmen there in Connecticut. So we can get more predictive outcomes. So very cool. Lots of good stuff. Thank you all for being on. We have a couple minutes left. We like to stop at the top of the hour, but if somebody has an announcement that they want to share very quickly, this would be a good opportunity. Other than that, I'll turn it to you, David. Yeah, to close out.
Yeah, Matt.
I'm sorry. This is Dion in Southern California. I have a quick announcement before we close out.
Please, yeah.
I wanted to share with the group that we are part of the evaluation team for the SURF program in California, which is the California Economic Resilience initiative that the state is doing to have inclusion be a part of all planning for economic development in this coming 3-year program. And so we're the economic development arm of the evaluation. So we will be giving guidance and input to all of the 13 regions as they go through their planning and implementation process. And we're very excited about this and are looking forward to incorporating some of the metrics that you have been coming up with and being able to share what we learned from this process.
Great. Congratulations, Dion. That sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, Matt, we also have a, let's see, Robert Allen from the Virginia DMC. Robert, you want to?
Good, thanks. Just to say that now that we have a new and for the first time, we have a DoD, a DoD Secretary for Industrial Policy. So Lauren Terracao has now been confirmed, and I'm sure that we're all anxious to get heads up on what the changes and amendments and improvements to defense industrial policy are likely to be.
That's great, Robert. Sounds good. And we look forward to coming out and visiting you too. Thanks for working with us on nailing that down.
Yeah, and then one really quick thing before we wrap up here. We've got Jeremy Avens on from Department of Energy. We'll have Jeremy on the 24th, along with Alex Hydrian, to speak more to a few programs that were just announced by the DOE. But Jeremy, do you want to talk about the FOA that came out today?
Sure, and I'll put a link in chat. So there's a $54 million funding opportunity from the Department of Energy to expand the Industrial Assessment Centers program to skilled trades training institutions. So this is a program that to date has funded universities to provide energy performance assessments of small and medium-sized manufacturers. Infrastructure law expanded the program substantially. So this will be creating some of those workforce training centers at community colleges, union training programs, and trade schools. We can talk more about it on the 24th. There's also a lot of opportunities for manufacturers themselves to get grants to implement recommendations that come out of engagement with IACs and centers like them.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. And we'll be sure to have you back on in 2 Mondays from now with a bit more time to talk more about what that program entails.